What's up, wrestling fans? We are back again for another episode. I'm going to get it right. WTCtv. We're back with
Yes,
another topic.
yes, that's
Yes, got it. We're back with another hot topic. And this quick episode, we are going to ask, is the wrestling card hobby in a better place today than it was 5 years ago? Interesting question you propose here, Paul. So, is it in a better place now than it was 5 years ago?
well. Let me give some background. The as we get bigger, we get not sucked in, but we become part of the greater collecting hobby. Like when I was by myself in Baltimore in 2010, trying to get people involved with wrestling, they didn't know what it was. But today you say wrestling and it's a thing. So there's been a lot of shit that's happened and happening in the hobby. And my question is that these are negative things. Do they adversely affect our end of things, wrestling cards? Like, for example, breaking issues, and we could have an entire show just on breaking. But nowadays, and we mentioned this on our last hot topic, it goes from fanatics to breakers to end user. But we all know how some of the controversy that happens with some of these breakers, these backyard breaks, and how it's been alleged that they have preferential treatment, that they get stuff that no one else gets, that it's rigged, that there's been a lot of bad behavior on behalf of some of these players and actors. You know, uh,
Yep.
PSA has just been bought by the dude, or sorry, Beckett was just bought by the guy that owns PSA. So now that's all under one roof. There's been grading inconsistencies. There's been higher prices. If a card is worth 10 times more, we're going to charge X times more on the breaking. There's been accusations of rig breaks. There's been accusation of PSA grade flipping. There's been widespread shill bidding going back to a couple of years ago when someone was trying to queer some of our auctions. There was recently a $350 million forgery scandal. There's monopoly concerns, like I just mentioned that PSA owns Beckett, but there's
Yep.
large monopoly concerns that Fanatics owns the printing presses, that owns the all of it, you know.
Yeah.
And then, questions about overproduction, high prices, affordability. One of the topics that you and I have sort of touched on a few times, the lack of being able to put a set together, that the hobby isn't for kids anymore, that, you need big bread. This latest Bape set, you're spending $35 a card, lack of transparency, and on and on. And these are things that aren't new necessarily to the greater hobby, but as we sort of mature and come into our own, my question to you, sir, is that is this going to affect us adversely? And were we better off 5 years ago when we weren't sort of as big as we become and we were our own little island, our own little niche onto each other where we could decide we're sports, we're non-sports. This is not a rookie, this is a rookie. We're going to go with first appearance because we have that ability. As we become bigger, we sort of become sort of beholden to what's going
Yeah.
on with everything else. Now, I don't follow that stuff too closely. I know Gelman does a great job of sort of educating us on what's going on. Um, but for me, it's like, oh fuck, this, that, this. Yeah, I just don't have time for that. And if I was a baseball guy, or if I was a big stick and ball sports guy, and I saw some of this stuff, or if I relied on breaking, like I've always, things have changed for me, as you know. I don't know that I'd like it. So that's my question to you. With all this stuff I've just laid out, are we better off or not?
Well, you spent a lot of time looking at all the negatives. Did you have you research any positives?
Well, the positives are there's more cards out there. There's more people in the hobby. What else you got?
That's all you got? Like you just
Yeah,
went
okay.
off a laundry list of like 30 things of like all the things are the shits about growing in a hobby.
Yeah, okay, we're growing, but are we growing one in the right direction? Are we growing positively? You know, all
Well,
these
as
things are
as
going
I
on. I
mean,
mean,
we're in a niche of the hobby that has grown tremendously over the last 5 years, and these are part of the growing pains. As I've been saying a long time, you guys want to be accepted. Here you are. You're now being accepted, and part of that acceptance of being taken seriously as a serious card collector, serious card part of the card industry is you get to absorb all of these controversies, all of these criticisms, all of these monopolies, all of these scandals. You get all of these come part of growing in the big. Now, how you handle these things is going to be
well,
different,
I'm
obviously.
still not catching your answer. Yes or no? Are we better off for it? Is the question.
I'm at a 50-50 at a yes and a no. I'm at the no part of it because of all those things take me away from what made me love the hobby so much more 5 years ago, which was just the fun of collecting without having to worry about these big other places of baseball, basketball, football, all these other places that had all of their issues and drama didn't really exist within our hobby. Starting to take advantage of social media, creating these podcasts of talking about our hobby is caused, taking sides now has caused rifts in our hobby now that never existed before. We used to all kind of get along in the same little pond. Now that pond has been flooded by heavy rains, and now we're part of a big giant river. It's
River,
it,
more like
it
an ocean, dude.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we're not quite the ocean. I think we hit ocean status when we
We're
start hitting
in the
seven figure
ocean,
type cards.
we're in the ocean. We're the small fish in the big sea now, but we're in that big sea.
We're in a big sea. I don't think we're part of the ocean yet. I think we get in the ocean when we start hitting these seven figure type cards like that. But being six figure cards and only having less than a handful
Great.
is really starting to push us towards that kind of territory, I think. But yeah, I think we're in a better place now in the sense that we have more marketability for us now. We have more eyes on our product. We have more people who are interested in like interesting wrestling cards. Relatively speaking, they are more affordable than getting into baseball, basketball, football, that kind of stuff. Um, Even our legends of things, you can still go out there and find legendary cards of your Hogans, of your Flairs, of your Macho Mans, things like that, which would be the equivalent of finding your Jordans, finding your Ruths, finding those kind of things. Um, uh, is probably way more affordable than any of those other sports. So
But
I do.
speaking of affordability, before you get off this point, is yes, we're cheaper than the other sports, but
Sure.
we're way more expensive than we used to be. Hogan
Of
autograph,
course. Yeah,
Taker
yeah,
autograph,
but
you
well,
name it, it's more.
I think
A lot more.
just because you are a long time 40 plus year collector in the wrestling hobby, like yourself, myself, it's my 40th year this year, 2026, um, does not entitle you to benefits of like, well, I deserve to have cheaper stuff because I've been doing it for such a long time. No, it's
But you
not
can
how
have
it
an
works.
opinion. You can have an opinion about the way things are going.
Sure, I could have an opinion if I just got into the hobby yesterday.
Yeah, nobody's got my point is that when when things change, a lot of times you have a lot of people, especially if they've been around for a while, kicking and screaming. And
Mhm.
I'm the first guy to say, hey, you've got to go with it. If the positives that are coming along with it are outweighing. Now you're saying we're 50-50, and I don't disagree with you. We're not, to
No,
put a
you know what?
percentage on it.
I might even change my answer and say maybe like 60-40, probably 60 in the negative right now because we're trying to absorb all of these things that we're getting being a bigger part of the hobby now. We're like a lot of people have been a part of the hobby, the chucksters, out there who are just quietly and nicely collecting what they've collected for so many years are now like exposed to all of this, the controversies, the divisions, the things
That's
like
why
that
that's why
they're
Chuck
not
is
used.
that's why Chuck's throwing in the towel, right?
Yeah,
We're
well, I mean,
losing,
he's
we're
throwing in the towel
losing.
because it's the affordability aspect of it is what he can't guys can't do. I mean, myself included. I'm in that same boat. I had to change course, because I just can't do what I used to do, and I made that decision long before there was a Panini era. I mean, right at the beginning of the Topps era. I was like, I am tapping out because I already know that I cannot go out there and get everything that I like to get that I used to get, which we talked about many times before. So yeah, I'm 60-40 on it. I think we're 40% positive and 60% not so much.
Yeah, like breaking, for example, there's a lot of controversy in breaking. There's a lot of shit that goes on. And, like I say, I don't follow it too closely, but I get sort of the short strokes on it. And my thing is that, well, I'm glad I don't break. That's not how I get my product. Then
Same.
I see all this PSA stuff and I see how a six is a nine, is a three, is a depending on time of day and whether
Sure, sure.
the grader got laid the night before, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as to the inconsistencies in grading. And now this repack stuff is causing people that's changing the game. And I say to myself,
Hmm.
well, I'm glad I don't grade. So that doesn't affect me either. I've always thought grading is a racket, but I appreciate the fact that you want to sell your card, if you want to turn it around and flip it, then you're going to get the top number with a top PSA grade. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so for me, the only thing that has changed is just the accessibility to cards because the guys that used to buy buy this stuff, the guys that would buy cases before, they can't afford to, or they're not giving allocations. You know, the just the structure of it has changed for me, but I'm still doing the best I can. And I've resigned myself to the fact that, hey, if I can't buy a Bape set in large order, in other words, get a good chunk of them in one go, then I'm out. I'm just not going to bother. I'm not going to put together an
Yeah.
National Treasure or an Exalted or a Royalty one card at a time. It's too much. It's too much for Chuck to have to deal with it, you know, and you're just paying too much. And you know, like I did both Immaculates, I did both Impeccables. I'm almost done, but still not yet after 2 years now, National Treasures. But I'm like massively upside down on those sets. But I didn't buy them for the value. I didn't buy them to say, hey, I'm going to turn around and sell them and make a profit. That's never been my game. I've always been a true collector. And people say, well, what's a true collector? Paul Anand is a true collector. Look at the wall. You know, it's all there. And I think people recognize that sometimes it's, you know, for the love of the game. You know,
Yeah.
you're just in it and you do it. So I'm always going to be a wrestling card fan. Um, Interesting how you put a percentage on it, you know, 60-40 to the negative. For me, it's like, well, things have changed. And for some people, things have changed for the better. Like now, all of a sudden, there's people that are loving the hobby and in the hobby that might not have been there before because of the structure of it and the way it goes down. But
Yeah.
you know, I'm not into monopolies. I'm not into bullshit, you know, and some of these cats that are running these breaking companies are pieces of shit. You know, I'm just not into that world, you know, and you know, again, God bless Gelman for being our sort of point man, our guy on the front lines to sort of give us the short strokes on all the negative shit that's happening within the greater hobby. But you know, I don't like it, you know, clearly.
Well, I mean, of course you're not going to like it, and nor do I in a certain degree, but you know, you have to learn to evolve and change with it. It's like
Really?
that, you know,
Oh,
and I get it. I totally get what you're saying. So I guess using the 60-40 analogy of what's negative, I wouldn't call it negative, I guess. I call it probably more difficult.
yeah. Because we had that shill bidding problem for a while and we sort of, that kind of went away. Um, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting
The chill
discussion.
bidding is still very much here. Still
Well,
very much here. We
well,
still have the quote unquote terrorist out there existing.
well, he's not as active, and I'm pretty sure I know who that terrorist is. We're in a different position, and you know we had this discussion many moons ago about how look, you got to be resilient and you have to adapt. You know, if you're going to stay in this hobby, yeah, you can do like you did. You know, you were a master set collector, then you went to being a nothing collector, then you became a Loomis collector. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I've
I'm
I'm
still
still,
having just as much fun as I did before.
yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it's the collecting, and then it's this. It's having been in the very fortunate position to do this stuff with you and other people in the hobby, which brings a whole other like I'm very much enjoy being part of community efforts. You know what we do at the national and what we do on these
Sure.
shows, the sort of extracurricular things that we do for the
But
hobby.
by that way, you and I are feeding into this expanding of the hobby more and more by going to the national every year and explaining that there are resources out there to help pe better educate people. And so we're kind of tiny, minute part of that problem of like expanding things, I guess, right?
Yeah,
As far as like
you
uh,
know.
making this thing grow.
Yeah, I mean, and I get negative feedback all the time. Like, says who? So people say to me, just because I made a comment, just because we talk a lot doesn't mean that we're the be all and end all. We're just
No,
here identifying some of the issues. And again, like many of these hot topics, we welcome your feedback, the audience. What do you think? Have you been around long enough to be able to say, hey, I liked it better in 2018 when we were just dealing with tops, or I liked it better at the beginning of the Panini era. But there's been so much change to the cost of boxes, to the way things are going, to all of it. And I mean, we look at the big number stuff, we look at the five-figure cards, and we say, well, this has to be a good thing. But I'm not so sure. Does it have to be? And again, some people are going to love the hobby today. Some people are going to be sort of like us, taking the positives and negatives and trying to weigh them and putting percentages on them.
sure.
And there's going to be some like Chuck that just can't stand it, that yearn for the earlier days where, it was just me, him, and Nick on your forums and nobody else.
Hey, I miss the days of having to go back inside when the lights came on out straight, but it's not the case anymore. So I'd love to hear from people about that too. Some people actually who listen or watch this are also they're brought into this hobby because of the Panini era. That's when they got
Correct.
into it. So
Correct.
they're only known for their last 5 years.
Right.
Has it been all fun for you collecting since you got in it? Did you come in here from baseball, basketball, football, F1, whatever it is that you got? We're out there collecting, and now you're into wrestling because it's more affordable to you. Is it increasingly getting too much for you? I mean, I like to hear what people have to think about this topic specifically. Are we in a better place now than we were 5 years ago?
Yeah, and if you're one of these newer guys, I even asked 2 years ago with last year what we went through with Topps Chrome, and I say Topps Chrome even though the other sets, but it felt like it was all Topps Chrome,
Yeah.
versus say 2, 3 years ago Panini. Like if you happen to jump on board after the first Prism set or after the first Select set or Revolution set or what have you, um, how do you feel now? Are you still with us or did you call it a day? You know, it's very much in the eye of the beholder, this kind of thing. This is one of those questions where it depends on what you're into, because if you can get what you're after at a price that you're comfortable with, then you're happy. But some of us, we can't get what we're after anymore. And the guys that used to get it for us, they can't get what they're after anymore. So
Hmm.
it's changed quite a bit. And maybe it's a bit pie in the sky to say it's too bad that this hobby is for, like 30, 40, 50-year-old men with deep pockets and not the young kids. But you know what? You and I have seen these young kids nowadays at the show, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
So,
Well, shit. You see them with their
believe
little
me,
suitcase, they're
believe
whipping out
me,
hundreds, man.
the kids have changed.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
they're out there. Yeah, they're out there. They're high rollers themselves, man. Jesus.
Oh yeah. Big time high rollers, spending more than, my plane ticket to get over there, you know.
Yeah, big time.
Interesting discussion. I don't know if we've resolved anything, and I
Yep.
really say, I mean, I do yearn for some of the simpler times of the hobby, and I wish that some of the negativity that goes, it's money and it's business, and in business, unfortunately, with business comes greed. With business
Yep.
comes interest. Everyone's trying to get to the finish line first. I've been a businessman, self-employed my entire life, so I'm well aware of some of the things you need to do to propel yourself forward. But wrestling cards for me was always an escape. It was like playing my bass guitar. It was something I enjoyed doing because I love watching wrestling. It's like, oh, and I love card collecting, and I married the two and met Tony Vela, and off we went. Um, but it's interesting. It's an interesting discussion. It's an interesting topic. Where do you sit on it? Do you find that you're not enjoying yourself as much today as you did many years ago? Or are you finding that, man, good that we finally got our shit together and we're on this path to righteousness and enlightenment? Um, Interesting.
Like to hear people's feedback.
Yeah. So that's all I got on this one. Anything else, Tony?
I'm good to go, man.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. So yeah, let us know. Are we better off today than we were a few years ago? And which direction are we headed in? Are we heading in the right direction? Is our hobby going to be something we're going to be proud of and we're going to be able to hold the mantle high and say, yeah, lifelong?
We'll see.
We'll see.
I know a famous word from someone. Time will tell.
Time will tell. Thanks everybody. We'll see you for the next one.
We're out.